Welcome to IB Unplugged, a Cognity podcast for IBDP educators that tackles your submitted questions and challenges by connecting you with experts and peers who share their ideas and stories from real classrooms. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of IB Unplugged, where John and I are coming from Vienna.
Together. We actually get to be in the same space, talking with somebody in the same space. This is going to be fun.
Very exciting. We're meeting with Kate LeBrun today, and we are going to talk about side gigs and having other roles beyond just the identity of being a teacher.
Yeah, really good option to kind of talk about like how you can be an educator and a person. You can do stuff that's not always teaching related all the time. And you know, we're going to explore different elements of that. Like, what does your identity look like in this? What's sort of the elements of guilt of like, am I taken away from my students now because I'm focusing on this thing? And just ultimately how to be authentically you in this process. So it's a really exciting thing. And I'm really looking forward to chatting with Kate about this.
Yeah, I agree. Kate has a great background. She, like many of you, has traveled all over the world teaching in international schools. She's been teaching as a special ed teacher, and she is also a writer. So she's going to talk to us about some advice on being a writer and a teacher. She's going to talk about those experiences of balancing. And yeah, you're in for a great episode. So with that, let's bring in Kate. Hi, Kate. Welcome to this episode of IB Unplugged.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks, guys.
This is our first episode where we get to all be in the same room with everybody.
Yeah.
So,
My God, what an honor.
Yeah,
It's
made
great.
it all the way over here to Vienna so that we could all be in the same space.
Yes.
Really cool.
Yes.
yeah. So super excited. We like to start off each episode with some warm-up questions. And I would like to just start off a little bit on why you have gotten into education. How did we get here now?
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Education has been one of the only things that's never felt like a job to me, particularly special education. For a long time, I was a lifeguard and swim instructor. And I always was drawn to the kids who didn't get it the first time, really struggled, really hated swimming, those sorts of things. My mom is a special ed teacher. So naturally, I was like, well, I'm not doing that. And then the more that I, again, continued to work with kids, and then when it came time to choose university, it was kind of a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, I want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that sort of entrance into it. And I think most educators can relate to that, right? I just want to help young people.
Yeah.
There's some people that need some support and I can be there for them, which is cool. Now, I know we're going to be talking quite a bit about like educating and kind of keeping all these things together. And I know you're a mom as well as doing some creative work, some writing on the side and teaching. So do you have typical days? And if you do, what's a typical day like?
We pray for a typical day. A typical day is the stuff of our lives. I feel like we live definitely on routines, schedules. It's kind of how, and I think personally thrive when I have a schedule and some predictability with kids. It is essential.
Yes.
And it's also like an elusive butterfly that you can't catch. So like even today, you know, I had parent meetings lined up. We had things at school. And one of my kids gets a fever, right? And those sorts of things, they happen.
Yeah.
Did the meeting from home. All is fine.
Yes.
But yes, so typical day, typically waking up, hitting snooze a few times, trying to make it through, depending on how much we've slept the night before with my youngest. And then I have to work out to function, much more for mental health purposes, but just getting up to move. I'm a much kinder person. And I also feel, I think, a little bit more in control of my day.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yes. Yeah, first thing. So getting that out of the way and making that kind of a priority for me first thing in the morning. It's also time by myself before, you know, everyone wakes up, trying to get a little meditation in. This is a work in progress for sure. But then it's just getting ready for school, getting the day together. We're really fortunate to have, right now we have family in town who are our childcare.
Oh, the
so,
best.
I mean, truly. And it's not something, you know, as international teachers, you're not having that family around all the time.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you guys know exactly. Just living away from family. So having truly like the day-to-days, like our kids waking up and being like, where's Nana and Pop? You know, where's Grammy? Like, I want to read the story. All of that stuff is really great. And selfishly, it's very helpful to have that help in the morning. Live in. Yeah. So we get ready for the day, off to school, getting the ball rolling. My son goes to kindergarten, so we take him to school as well, making it through the day. I don't know if you want the ins and outs of a special ed teacher's day, but, you know, much like normal teaching, just getting through meetings, teaching kids, having fun.
Just teaching, getting through meetings.
Which perhaps is something many can relate to.
I think I didn't bat an eye at it.
No.
I was like, yes, that's the gig.
Well, and it really is part of it. And a lot of times with special ed too, you're having the meeting before the meeting and, which actually it is very important. And it's a helpful part of my job because then you go into those meetings feeling much more prepared. So take back my disparaging comment. Very important work we do. And then at the end of the day, our school culture, a lot of people at our school, when the school day ends, we do leave. There's not a ton of hanging around. So we take off, pick up my son, go back home. It's the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And then you're making it to bedtime, bath time, clean up and quiet time is a big part of our routine. And at the end of the day, decompressing. And I think just trying to find time. Right now, again, this is my first month back to work from being on maternity leave after a majority of last year. So we're really just trying to navigate what does that look like now that both of us are back?
Yes.
How much energy we've got? And for me, it's also trying to find what are ways that I can feel like I'm ready to do it all again tomorrow, as opposed to, I know I'm a huge, when I've got a phone, I will scroll and scroll and scroll. So trying to limit social media and things, I think has been helpful in trying to maintain some sort of a typical day.
Yeah. You have been we've talked a bit about how you've been doing a lot of creative work, especially while you were on your parental leave, coming back. Do you feel like having the time to do some creative writing and this kind of work, has that changed your teaching at all? Or have you changed your perspective on anything in teaching?
10,000%. And I actually think, I don't know if it's so much about the creative work itself, but the approach to the creative process. I think in my second maternity leave, especially, I kind of got the hang of, okay, this is how I set up a writing practice. It helps that my daughter was a really great nap time sleeper. So that was where it was like, great, I'm going to capitalize on these times. But you have to be just so present for the time you have allotted because you don't know how long that time's going to last. So I think it's actually made me a much more present teacher in terms of I came back to work and it was, again, like such a joyful experience because I really love my job. And being with students was like, I'm so happy I'm here in this room with you right now. And I feel like that's exactly what I do with writing, which is exactly what I do with my kids. Yeah. So I feel like that, I don't know, kind of intentionality and presence really has improved for me now that I think I'm a parent, but also that I've had some concentrated time to develop a creative practice and see that creativity in my work with students as well.
Yeah. Wow, Kate, you got plenty going on. There's a lot of things happening for sure. But as you're talking there, I'm like, I understand that. I understand a young parent as well, and just sort of new at this, I guess, and figuring it out, and also balancing all the other gigs and that sort of stuff that's happening as well. So, I guess when you think of all the stuff you get to do, how do you define success? Like, what's kind of at the end of the day, like, that was my success today.
Yes, that has totally changed as well over the last few years. I consider myself a super goal-oriented person. And I think in the past, it's really been working towards these big, my master's degree or leading a conference or writing a workshop or things like that. Those have been kind of the definers of success. And now it is really a day by day. Yeah. What is my priority for the day? Was I able to make that a priority? Yes. Yeah. And that feels so good and so successful to me. And again, whether that was, okay, the priority is like Friday night movie night, right? Making it home, really being present in the Friday night dance party, chicken nugget fry situation, and then watching a movie all together. Like that feels so successful to me. And at the same time, one of the things that I've built into the creative process is sitting down with my husband and kind of booking these days for creative time and blocking out time on the schedule that works with my husband is a teacher as well. So working with what's happening in school, making sure it's not, a time that's conducive for both of our schedules, but making sure that when that day happens, I get my writing time, I leave the house, we write, that's success too.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that is so important to be aware of. You can still have these long-term goals, but like you have to celebrate those short-term wins. Like earlier today, I was like, I meal prepped on Sunday. I was like, woo, look at me go.
Yeah.
And you need those wins too.
Definitely.
So I want to move on to the first segment, which is this idea of the educator beyond the classroom. And for a bit more context, could you share what inspired you to begin writing alongside your career as a teacher?
Yeah, writing has always been present in my life. From the time I was a kid, playing around with crayons, absolutely loved writing. And it was something that I found that I continuously kind of went back to at different periods of my life. Yep. When I got to college, that was the first time I'd sort of heard of journals and literary journals and that sort of thing. And my first experience with publication in-house, right? So it was also the first time I'd ever shared some of my writing. And to found that received was hugely exciting to me. So it was cool to know that like, hey, this is a thing. You could try this. So then my first publication was in university. And then afterward, I was working in Seattle at quite an intensive centered program for students with a variety of different needs. But writing became a very big outlet outside of work. And that was another time when I was writing a lot of poetry, and I submitted that poetry. And that was also my first exposure to being published in an online capacity. So then there was the move to Korea, which is not long after I taught in the States. And that was a whole other kind of world shaking experience of realizing, oh, this is international teaching. This is a thing that people do. Families do this. This is a long-term thing. I had thought like, oh, I'll go over for a year and kind of see. Just kidding.
I think all of us thought that.
I'm
just going to do 2 years.
Find myself.
It's not a big deal. Yeah, exactly. And then you get over there and just absolutely fell in love with Korea. And I also fell in love with the fact that there was so many creative opportunities in special education at that time. It was around like 2016. Special education in international schools was really expanding. So I feel like a lot of my creativity was going to the job and going to figuring out what this role looks like and being here. And once we moved to Vienna in 2020, that was when I've been on and off for maternity leave over the past few years. And it cropped back up in my life and was like, this is something that continues to be here and I do not want to ignore it. So having the time and space, I think, away from work for a little bit to really allow myself to, I think, almost have the courage to kind of do it because it's so vulnerable, right? And you're operating in a completely different capacity as a teacher than you are as a writer. And so to even have the time and space to be like, just try. Just try. Just write. Just do what you like and find, that took like a few months to even get a rhythm down. So something I continuously go back to, being international as well. You're constantly meeting new people, seeing how the world works, and that's incredibly inspiring.
Yeah. I love what you're talking about here, Kate, because you're basically kind of paving the way of you have an identity as a teacher and you're here like in that classroom and this is something we do. And I think every teacher, you go in there, you want to do the best you can. You want to take care of your kids. And we have that passion, that love for what we're doing. And sometimes that can kind of take over all of it, right? There's I wake up and I'm thinking about my lessons. And then I go and I teach my lessons. After my lessons, I'm like marking work or I'm planning for the next thing. And I'm just sort of almost always in that teacher mode. But what you've just described here is like this opportunity or almost invitation to, you can have an identity outside of being a teacher. Do you feel like most teachers are kind of encouraged to do that? Or is there even kind of a like, oh, don't do that. You shouldn't, you are a teacher and then think about like a teacher all the time.
I think that's such an interesting question. And with my most recent project in writing, I'm actually sort of exploring what that looks like. And this could go off on kind of a tangent, so feel free to rein it in.
We love tangents.
It's great. I feel like the two areas that kind of crop up for me with that have to do a lot with women in education and have to do a lot with special ed teachers in particular, at least the areas that I'm interested or, have direct experience with to some capacity. I feel like sometimes when you have a woman in education, and societal conditioning is super powerful, right? So you have a woman in education. A lot of times, it's associated that it's their calling. They're here from a nurturing perspective. It's very compassionate, very tender, very like, let me take care of you type of deal. And I think with that comes the association that extends to your identity outside of school, perhaps. And I think especially that extends to motherhood. Right. So for women in education, I feel like a lot of times people are looking to see, oh, do you have kids? You want kids? You married? That kind of question. And I have so many good friends who are phenomenal education teachers who have chosen that kids are not part of the equation for them. And that's part of their identity outside of school. And I actually find that they face a lot of societal pressure, even in the international community, which I feel like sometimes we kind of pride on being a little bit ahead, really open, like, and I've found that they've experienced some interesting reactions about even their capacity as a teacher because they've chosen this lifestyle for themselves outside. And that's part of that identity outside of teaching. So that kind of comes up for me with that question. And it's like, obviously it doesn't pertain to me, and I have chosen to have kids. And but it's something that I do think about as a woman in education and how we're sort of looked at and what our expectations are outside, and how people perceive that outside. Yeah. And then I think the other aspect from a special ed standpoint is a lot of times when people find out that I'm a special education teacher, the first response is like, "Oh, you're such an angel," or like,
"You're doing God's work.
You are doing the Lord's work." Yeah. And it's a lot of like, "Oh, you're such a saint," like that kind of thing. And I'm not trying to be patronizing by any means, because I think people really do mean well with that comment. And at the same time, I don't know if they're aware that there could be few things like more disparaging to the students that I work with,
right?
Because they are not in a position at all where they need a savior, and they're not in a position where they're needing somebody to take care of them or rescue them. And not only that, but it's not like I'm doing them a favor with my job. This is the most mutually beneficial thing, is to get to work with disabled kids and with this population. Yeah. So
accountants are doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Could not do that to save my life, right? No. And I also, I get that feedback too. And I get that that's a general response to what a lot of people do.
Of course.
And totally understand. But I think there is a bit of a perspective shift that then when I show up with my advocacy, perhaps outside of work, or that I'm a writer outside of work, and that identity isn't solely consumed by advocating for those with special needs, people a lot of times have, where do I put you? You're not falling into that category of like, oh, nice and squishy, and all that sort of thing. So I think it's just something to be aware of, and something I wanted to point out with those two identities, because I think women in general, but also special educators perhaps face a lot of that outside of their work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think usually people think about it from the student side of like, if one of your students see you outside of school, it's like this like deer in headlights. Whoa, you don't sleep in the closet?
Totally.
But it's kind of like everybody's like that. Like teachers don't growing up with a mom as a teacher, the parents were equally weird at the restaurant.
Yeah.
It's not only the kids.
Nobody knows what to do.
Yeah, exactly. And it's this idea of like, okay, I can deal with the fact that you're a mom on the side, but now you're at a restaurant doing stuff with friends.
And maybe it's 8 p.m.,
Yeah. Shouldn't you be in bed? So then it's like, that's one thing just to exist socially outside of a teacher. But then I think maybe it depends school by school on what school cultures are and things like that. But I think there's another level where if you're taking on an extra job or side gig or whatever it is, where it's not just a passion, but it's something that goes a bit deeper, there's this idea of sometimes, are you committed enough to the teacher identity?
Totally.
Or are you like, can you be fully committed to being a teacher and have a side hustle? Or are they going to always be pulling at each other? I think is a really tricky thing for people to have to explain their way out of. So
I think it's also really interesting, like school culture is such a big part of that.
Yeah.
Right? And kind of what the expectation, and then in that little microcosm is, okay, what's the city? What's the country? Where is that all taking place? Because then there's also international expectations with that. Yeah. And those are, I think, at play in that whole dynamic. It's really interesting.
There's also that element, I think, of teachers, we're commonly talking about, we're so busy. We got a lot that we've got going on. We're doing all these things. And so when you kind of bring up this idea of like, I'm also doing this thing outside of the classroom, there's almost must be nice that you can have all this time. I could never get that time because I'm so dedicated to my classroom kind of thing. So there's almost like an impression of guilt that kind of comes your way when it's like, you've got sort of this side gig going on. What is that all about?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I think there's a tricky dynamic that kind of plays, and you mentioned like school culture, and I think the things that we kind of create. But ultimately, I think it's fair and actually really important to have identities outside of the classroom as well. And whether it's writing or doing something else, I think you kind of need that element of catharsis, right? Like let's do this thing outside of what my normal day to day might be like. So I'm kind of interested, like, do you feel like for you that writing is that kind of key thing? Is that main area that offers that catharsis, that real like shift away from what I'm doing in school all the time?
10,000%. In terms of too, like, I think it's a few things because I've got like, the little rituals of working out and, having a moment of meditation or listening to a podcast or those sorts of things, which you do for you. But I do feel like writing in particular is really a way to create something that in turn comes back and fills you up. Mm-hmm. It's an output. You're putting in hard work. You're focusing on something, which like feels so good these days to just focus on something for longer than maybe 10 minutes. Sorry. Talking with the hands. I get so excited. Yes. So I feel like having that time to really pour into something that then you look at, and not only is it maybe a physical product, I mean, most of the time it is like, wow, I've spent this long on writing one sentence, or I went back through and I edited like 2 paragraphs. Like that's not a ton of work. Mm-hmm. However, it's a time that you spend just for you doing something that really makes you restore yourself. Yeah. And I feel like those opportunities are few and far between because people are so busy, because there are so many different things asking for our attention right now. And to truly like sacrifice something else to give up time to something that fills you up is the most like restorative, cathartic thing that I could do right now, probably.
And I think that it's such a good perspective of like, even if I've only made one sentence, it's still like the process of it was healing for you too. It's not just the end product. You're saying you're a goal-oriented person. And I think sometimes that can be really tricky with when you're doing something creative and you have limited time where okay, in 2 hours, this is what I've blocked off. That's all I've got. And I think it is a mindset shift of whatever you're doing. I am horrible at embroidery. I've spent maybe like 5 hours of my life on it. But you do it for an hour and then you're like, I made a leaf. But it was like, but I spent an hour not on my phone doing something with my hands, and that felt so good. Yeah. Like this leaf means so much to me.
And it's a special leaf because you made it,
Exactly. No, but I do think that a lot of people are kind of gravitating more towards needing these creative outlets right now more than ever. And I think that sometimes people do justify it if it does mean I'm not spending my time either on my career or with my family or whatever. I think it's getting hard to justify doing those side hustles, side gigs or jobs, whatever, for reasons other than I need to help pay my bills or something like that. It's like, I need the second job. You can need it for other reasons, not just financial reasons.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's still just as valid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, this kind of leads well into this idea of like teacher well-being, right? And balance. And, we often talk about well-being. We talk about it for students. And I'm really happy to hear that the conversation is shifting a lot more toward teacher well-being as well. I think we recognize, when teachers take care of themselves, students benefit just as much, right? And because they know somebody's coming in that's balanced and looking after themselves and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think, you described the typical day. And I was just going, okay, there's a lot happening here. What are some of your, I guess, biggest challenges or things that you kind of, you mentioned schedule. Here are the things I've got to like make sure that I've got some control over so that I can juggle all the stuff I'm doing from full-time teaching, from writing, from being a mom, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
To then maintain that sense of, well-being so that when you are with those students, you've got your best.
I feel like, and this was something that I learned from a very, very good teaching friend who we've on and off taught in the same locations over the last 10 years. But one of the things that she just really instilled in me is like, okay, what is the next most actionable thing that you can do in this moment? And that's like a reactive strategy, right? There's so much that you can do proactively. And so much of special ed too is about looking at the 80% even before a situation starts and seeing what you can do to set that 20% up for success, right? But I think that idea of like, okay, focus on literally the next thing that you can do to make it through this moment of overwhelm, to give yourself a moment of balance, whatever that is, I think has become a very helpful strategy these days.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I'm such a girl dad because I am just hearing Frozen 2 do the next, next best thing, right?
Yes.
I don't think you need to blame Lily for this.
Yeah, she hasn't watched it yet.
But you have been studying it for a while.
Yeah, I have been,
Yes. Yeah, no. I mean, it is funny how a lot of these Disney things do crop up because it's like age old. And I know that's not like super brilliant advice or anything, but it kind of is in terms of how simple it is and in terms of like, just be in the moment.
Yeah.
Get in the moment, look at what you can accomplish next.
Yeah.
reorient yourself with where you are physically.
Yeah. It's easy to get caught up on like with this, I got to take care of that. I got to take care of that. I got to take care of that. You kind of get overwhelmed with all things you haven't done yet.
Oh yeah.
So I really appreciate that. I appreciate that sort of centering on, right, next actionable thing. What's my next actionable thing? Let me put all my effort into that thing before I move on to the next one. And just kind of chunk by chunk, right?
Yes. Chunk by chunk, minute by minute sometimes, and that's okay too. And I think that's been a big shift for me, is accepting, because it drives me absolutely bonkers when I don't have something, out there that I'm really working towards, that I can make a little spreadsheet for myself and I'm cracking away at it. And I've just had in this season of my life to just be like, we're taking it. Maybe you can look to the weekend. But for the most part, just stay here. Stay in the day, see what we can get through today, and then tomorrow will be tomorrow.
Yeah.
Becoming a better IBDP educator is a daily practice informed through reading, research, personal experience, and episodes from IB Unplugged, like the one you are listening to right now. But sometimes the show can go a bit too quickly, or we can simply forget some of the key points once we are out of the car or back from our walk and in the office preparing for our next lesson. That's why it's easy to download the episode summary at cognity.com/IB Unplugged. Simply navigate to today's episode and click Free Summary to receive a condensed summary of today's episode, including links to other sources and other exciting bits of information you can use immediately in your daily practice. It's free and it helps. Now, back to the show.
You've talked about a lot of different mindset shifts of like being more present-minded and being really in the moment, taking things piece by piece. What can I do next? Do you have any other strategies or any other kind of recommendations for people who it's unfortunately when you're stressed, one of the first or some of the first things that you give up are the things that you need the most. Yeah. It's you stop exercising, you stop sleeping, you stop eating healthy food, you stop empathy is one of the first things that goes when people are stressed. Totally. You stop being nice. It's like all of your fundamentals start kind of crumbling away. But those are the things that, there were some of the first things that you talked about of what you need in your not daily routine. Do you have any advice for people who want to be either doing things like creative pursuits or other things, but they are kind of also struggling with either burnout or the plate's full. All of the plates are full and I don't know how to make space for what I care about and what I think I need.
Yeah. That's like the age-old question, right?
Yeah.
Therapy is amazing, right?
Yeah.
And yet you have to have time for that,
yeah.
Right? So I think one of the most beneficial things, and I will harp on this all day because I actually think, one, it gives you the balance to be so much more creative, but two, I'm such a believer in just like structure. And the only way you can have structure, which does help bring some sort of peace because it brings predictability, is if you're setting aside time to make the structure. Yeah. And I feel like that's one of the things that obviously is the first to go because you don't even have a minute to like sit down and breathe, much less you're so tired that you want to just get to bed, all those sorts of things. So like part of my prioritization is having a little chunk each week, or like I mentioned, my husband and I sat down at the beginning of last semester and just scheduled. We scheduled the downtime.
Oh, that's our Sunday night date night.
So you guys are so good. You're like an Instagram couple. You know the things, but that's like aspirational, right? Is to sit down and truly be like, and yet because you can do that, you can be romantic because you've set aside the time to do the boring stuff, which is the plan. Maybe there's some fun in that planning. Who's to say? But then because you've done the plan, you'd literally have time the rest of the week to follow up on that plan, right? So I think that's really great. And I do think that's the way that you can kind of get away from feeling like, I don't know, you're Alice falling in the tunnel, like just grasping at things and the things are happening to you, to taking some control back and being like, here is what I can control. And even if that's just writing down what I anticipate is going to happen tomorrow, it allows you to see something, which allows you to take a deep breath, which allows you to be like, okay, I can at least predict what's going to happen. It's no longer just flying at me.
Yeah.
I'm obviously, I'm a big fan of scheduling. I talk to my students about it all the time, and I schedule my life. Some of my friends from college would say the same thing. They always joked about how I had like my color coded. This is what I'm doing then, and this is what I'm doing then. And I have this nice calendar. And I think, as teachers, you kind of, part of that's built into you anyway, right? Because most schools are kind of governed by bells and specific timetables. You're going here and then you're going here. And then if you do activities after school, you do a sports team or something like that, that's what's going to happen. So much of the day is kind of planned out for you. But then when you get to the holidays, it's almost like, right, I can break free of my schedule and I can go do something on my own. And I'm not lying when I say within 3 days of holidays, I'm like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I need my calendar back. Like, get me where I need to be.
Bedtimes are not doing it for me.
Yeah, right.
It becomes all over the place. Yeah.
But, I guess with that, when you're scheduling these things and when you have these personal pursuits that kind of go beyond the classroom, beyond your typical teaching gig, and you're like, I want to do this other thing. And I might be able to get, if we've said side hustle or side gig, I can have I can get some income from this too. And it's something I'm passionate about. We mentioned it before that some people can feel a little bit guilty or hesitant about pursuing that passion.
Yes.
Yeah. And I guess I'm interested in your position. You kind of found this avenue. You're able to kind of balance both of these things. What would you say to that person who is kind of feeling guilty about like, oh, I'm not giving all my time to my teaching?
I would have to invoke the great Dr. Becky, who is the light in my life. I don't know. Are you guys familiar with Dr. Becky?
I don't know Dr. Becky.
I wish I was.
I feel
this is great. Oh my gosh, great. Okay.
Introduce me to Dr.
Have
Becky,
I got
please.
a woman for you? Okay. Yes. And she is, gosh, we're going to fact check this. But she's a child psychologist. She's written a book called Good Inside.
Oh, I know Dr. Becky.
We know Dr. Becky?
Yeah. I'm pretty awful at remembering authors' names, but I remember that book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Great.
still don't know Dr. Becky.
It's okay. You'll see when you get into the parenting side of Instagram too, she's got all the clippable clips and they're all like, everyone is as good as the last. And she just has a ton of like scripts to use with kids and how our job is not to make our kids happy, but our job is to like be a sturdy pilot and a safe container for all the feelings that they're going to feel in their life. She's amazing. But one of the things I think that I came across quite recently actually is what she says about guilt. And guilt, true guilt is when you're acting out of alignment. Again, sorry, Dr. Becky, if this is a misquote. But my interpretation of her quote was that true guilt is when you're acting out of alignment with something. And I feel like if you're feeling that with a creative pursuit and it's genuinely, you feel like you doing this side thing actually is taking away from your family or it is taking away from, your classroom, which management is really suffering or you're feeling like you're not on top of it, then that would be a moment I feel like to examine like, okay, maybe pump the brakes on this thing.
Yeah.
But if the guilt is actually just feeling like, okay, but I should be doing this. One, what is should to begin with? Who's defining that should? And maybe take a look at who that shoulder is. And if it's yourself and you're responding to like a people-pleasing thing or you feel like that's what you need to be doing, then it's not actually guilt. And finding a way to be gentle with yourself. And I think too, also finding what does bring you into more alignment with yourself, who you are supposed to be, because I feel like actually when I started taking my creative writing process seriously, and that's something where I had the courage to say like, no, I'm a writer. I do this. Even if it is in a super side gig capacity and something that I do in my very squeaky limited free time, it's still a part of who I am. And being a writer makes me a better teacher.
Yeah.
Because creative process, it allows me to live in the moment, but it also allows me to just own different parts of myself that I feel like I do bring to teaching, and that authenticity shows up then in your job.
Yeah.
So I feel like if there is any doubt or struggle there, really see if it's actually acting out of alignment with yourself, but then also see if there is something that you feel makes you a better person.
Yeah.
Then doing that can only make you a better teacher, can only make you better at what you do.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you, Dr. Becky.
Thanks, Dr. Becky.
Thanks. No, I think that's so great. And I really see that as an alignment thing. I completely agree with you. I luckily, working at Cognity, my team, all we do is work with teachers with side gigs. Like we're the side gig so many times with our authors.
Yeah. Don't look at me like that.
Like, this. Yeah.
She's talking about you.
Yeah. John? No, I mean, our community of teachers that we work with is so vast and all over the world and all coming in for it for different reasons. And I feel that the more in tune with the why that the subcontractor, the teacher is, the better they show up for that work.
Yes.
So I used to, the way that I met Matt, our mutual connection was that he was one of the first authors that I ever worked with. And he was such a good author because like he knew his why of why he was doing it. He wasn't like, I just felt like I needed to add another line to my resume. It was, I've got a lot of ideas and I want to tell everyone about them. And those kind of people that like come in knowing what they want, or if they don't know, but then they figure it out along the way, that works too. But it doesn't work when it's not aligned with like, they try it out and they're like, I don't even like writing. I just felt like I needed to do something more than just being a teacher. We see that too of people who think that I'm a teacher. I don't want to become an administrator. That sounds terrible. But I feel like I need some kind of career growth. And then they just start trying and they just are like, I'm going to be an author. I've been doing this a while. And they're like, oh God, I hate writing. And then, or maybe they try doing workshop presentations. Like, nah, I don't want to talk to them. And I think that if you keep coming back to why am I doing this? What is it bringing me also? I think that really helps too.
It sounds like, what I'm hearing is like, let's center in your own personal values. What are things you're really, that are the most important thing for you that, you might have a side gig that allows you to kind of express that a little bit more. But what I heard is check in first. Is this truly part of you? Right?
Yes.
Is this truly a part of you that you want to have, expressing itself? And then if it is, then there's no need to necessarily feel a bit of guilt in going that direction. And it lends itself a lot, I think, to this idea of balance and maintaining balance as an educator. And, a number of times I hear like work-life balance kind of thing. And I'm not going to lie, I get a little bit, I don't know, sometimes I get a bit upset about that. And I guess that's just because sometimes, when do you get your work-life balance stuff? I'm like, I'm invigorated by doing the things I do. I get involved in all this stuff. That actually builds me up a lot.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm wondering, a lot of people would kind of, in many cases, maybe blame the school, blame the admin, blame like the structure, the school culture, and say, well, these are the things that are taking me out of balance.
Yeah.
You guys are kind of pulling me away from this. And while I think there might be some element of truth there, and I think there's also some personal responsibility to take there too, there are things that schools might be able to do to help people achieve that balance. In your view, I guess, or in your experiences, are there ways that schools can maybe be more supportive of teachers' side gigs, side interests, maintaining their own levels of balance?
It's a very interesting question. And I know I'm not paid the bid bucks as any administrator, so keep that in mind. But I think as someone who does attend quite a bit of meetings, and there's a need for that, for sure, in what we do. And I know we were joking about it earlier, but now it's like actually relevant. I promise. I think kind of one of the low-hanging fruits is like if you want to honor people as people, if it can be an email or it could be a Google form or it could be something that's able to be completed online in people's own time or during their school day, and save the 45-hour, hour and a half meeting time because we have to have a meeting, I actually think that really honors people. Because what are they going to do with that time? They're going to go home. They're going to spend more time with their kids. They're going to go home. Maybe they are going to get that workout in. Maybe they are going to be like, you know what, I'm not going home. I'm going to go to a cafe and write or do my thing. People will use that time to honor themselves. Obviously, there is some personal accountability there and, knowing how to honor that time for yourself. And it is a luxury to do so. But at the same time, if the meeting cannot be a meeting, I think that's like a very low hanging fruit to helping people. Yeah.
Easy one to grab, right? Just because we have a meeting time doesn't mean we have to then fill it. And if it's just information, maybe that information gets out, as you say, in some other form. But really we meet because we need to collaborate. We need to creatively solve something. That's a purpose for it. Let's make sure we have that meeting in that respect.
Yeah.
But if we're kind of going over some info and just sort of passing that on, maybe there's a different avenue for it, huh?
Yes.
Okay. I hear that.
Something else that I loved that I've seen over the years is I love when schools champion the people who do it. Does your school, if you are running, I have obviously the cognitive experience, but it's like if somebody's running a workshop with me and then all of a sudden I see all the teachers at their school have like signed up to come to the workshop because their administrator blasted about it. Like, look, our teacher is doing something really cool and you should go see that. Or I've seen it with creative pursuits also, where if it's like you've done this thing as a teacher and I as the administrator, or even if it's just your colleague, you don't have to be the administrator, but it's just really thinking about like deliberately championing and celebrating teachers for having another identity, doing something that, I mean, submitting your work to a literary journal is scary. I mean, making yourself vulnerable by having your personal creative pursuits public is a really hard thing to do. Mm-hmm. So having people that share that work with other people also then can inspire the next person to be like, oh, I want to talk to Kate about that because I also have been wanting to do it, but I've been too scared to get started. And that kind of culture, I think, is also really important.
Yeah. And I see, and I feel like I've been really lucky to be a part of schools where they absolutely champion their teachers. Mm-hmm. Teachers are doing super cool things. Whether that's, I mean, there have been some teachers who've had books out. And I know when we came to Vienna, that was part of our welcome packet is books some of the teachers had written, which was cool. Yeah, really it was a super nice touch and also a great way to get to know the school and to know, hey, we support you. We've got your back. When I led a few workshops for Senia, it was also during pandemic times. It was the virtual conference. Our school was absolutely incredible about getting that out, about having the teachers sign up for some of those sessions and helping me work with my friend who was over in Berlin about making those sessions possible. And then too, even from like the passion side, I know in my previous school in Korea, there was a teacher who was a chef and he was really, really passionate about that. And so we had like a pancake day or a crepe day. Sorry if you remember that it was crepes, I apologize. Misspeaking pancakes. But yes, I believe one of the days he would come in and make crepes for everybody. And it was just a way where everyone kind of honored, this is the thing he does and he's really good at it and people enjoy it. And it just kind of lifts everybody's spirits too, to see somebody so in touch with something that makes them happy. Yeah. And then crepes make everybody happy. So
that's not a hard sell.
Not a hard sell. Not a hard sell. But I feel really fortunate to have always been a part of schools that I feel like really uplift their teachers and want to make their efforts known and also just support them along the way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's good to talk about these ways that we can be supporting teachers. We can kind of get them into their different pursuits and help them, pursue their passions and their side gigs and that sort of thing that fill them up quite a bit. I kind of want to dive a little bit more into your specific one with writing and what you've been able to do there. And I'm interested, when you think back or when you think about your writing and what you've actually been able to do with that, does that kind of help you, does it help you process some of the educational experiences you had? I guess I'm wondering to what extent do your educational experiences reveal themselves in your writing? Or I guess, does the writing kind of allow you to process some of the heavy days or the things that might happen in teaching? I mean, there's moments where you go home and it's rattling around in your head for hours and you got to find a way to kind of move it out. Does that happen with your writing as well? Or?
Yeah, no, kind of the intersectionality between the two. I would say my most recent writing project is very heavily influenced by experiences as an international school teacher, international special ed teacher, in my background in working with those populations. And I feel like it changes project to project. There have also been times when you just have so many, and I'm a deeply feeling person. So like you got a lot of feelings during the day and that's sometimes channeled into other things. Uh-huh. I know like one of the pieces I had published was about me being like a really bad park mom. It was an essay about me like not wanting to talk to other moms at the park.
Oh, I want to read this.
It's really short. It's super short. You could read it in 2 minutes. Well, I dropped my
I don't have to have it be short. I can read a long article.
John wants the book.
I'm not doubting your attention span, I promise. Give the book a few more years. But and so I think that was definitely a situation where I had a lot of feelings about being in a foreign country as mom, being on like an extended maternity leave. And that was channeled into that piece. I would say it's less present with what happens at school just because for me, there's also, I want to respect any student or family that I work with, and never have direct replicas or anyone appeared in my writing, out of kind of respect for the families. That being said, the feelings that everybody's having, being in an international context and just seeing the different types of cultures, family, people that interact with each other on a daily basis, that definitely shows up. And I constantly am inspired by, again, someone walking on the street carrying 7 spoons and 2 knives. And where's he going? And why is he wearing a tie? And why is he carrying these, cutlery on the street in Vienna? The things we'd see in Korea just daily. You never knew what you were going to turn around in a corner. Those sorts of things are much more, I feel like, likely to show up personally. Or just, I have a big bag of feelings and they got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
So that's a sneak preview to my writing if you're...
I'm hooked. Yeah. I'm ready for it. I want to check it out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And do you have any advice if a teacher, let's just stick with writing, but if they want to write creatively, they don't really know where to start. Maybe they have an education, maybe they don't, and created the creative writing space. What kind of advice would you have for somebody who hasn't started that yet, but wants to?
Yeah. I feel like a really easy way to kind of segue into it is just go to the internet. See, and I know that sounds really simple, but it's just like...
That wasn't what I was expecting you to say.
But that is a lot of what kind of my path has been in terms of like all of a sudden, I was reading, again, don't even know how you get started on these things, but you might come across some writing on Instagram, right? Because that is definitely how publishing and platforms are moving now as people are publishing a lot more. They're making it much more known. So maybe you see somebody on Instagram that you really like their writing. Do some research on them, see where they published anywhere else before. Is this something where they have a certain agent or they work with this, publisher, those sorts of things. Kind of going down that rabbit hole and then eventually ending up with, there's a bunch of like literary and writing podcasts, which I consider research. When I'm not like actively producing work or writing, that's what I'm listening to is a lot of these book and publishing and writing podcasts. And then from there, you hear even more. Okay, this guy was published in these journals. I wonder what their writing's like. So many journals are available online. Yeah. So I would say just like, don't feel like you got to start writing yet. Just do your research and then see what you connect with. And then from there, see if you've got that spark of inspiration. See if you're still thinking about it, during the day or when you go to bed at night, and just kind of follow that inkling, I think. But also don't put pressure on yourself. Again, just start by looking into it and gathering information. You don't have to make anything yet. That's okay. Yeah.
Thanks, Kate. What I really appreciate about what we've been chatting about so far is I think it's almost like you've been giving permission to teachers to be themselves. And it's not like we don't allow that, but I think at the same time, it's a good thing for teachers to recognize, like, I have these other parts of me that are beyond being an educator. And I'm allowed to have that life as well. And I can get into it in good ways. And I appreciate the actionable advice here with, if it's writing specifically or just recognizing things happen in the day, you need to find ways that you can process that as well. And when we talk about balance, burnout, stress, and things that are going to occur within an educator's lifespan, I think a lot of things that we've spoken about today are really quite useful and are really going to help people a lot. So thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us about it. I found it really, really useful.
This was really wonderful. It's so great chatting with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. IB Unplugged is a Cognity podcast hosted by John Patton and Courtney Marlene and produced by Catalina Gaffney. Be sure to subscribe or follow and share with your fellow IB educators. If you'd like to submit a topic, request, or question, please do so on cognity.com/IB Unplugged. Let's keep the conversation going and support each other in teaching with confidence, creativity, and joy. See you next time.